Hello everyone. In this video, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how to make our platforms a little bit more dynamic in a sense and go over some behaviors that we can apply to our platforms in order to make our game a little bit better. So just to kind of let you know, I'm starting off with what I ended up with in the previous videos of just getting your platformer set up. And what we did was we created two objects, a character and a platformer. The character itself had the platform and scroll to behaviors. And the platform one itself has the solid behavior. All right, so I'm gonna hit play real quick just to show you. We made it where the camera could move around and at least you could kind of do this, okay? Now what we want to do is just talk about how do we make our platforms a little bit more engaging to the user and so forth. So one thing we need to understand is what a clone is and how clones work. All right, so I always like to use the whole kind of like a example of clones in general is that it is an exact copy of itself. So that's what we did here. We did copy paste and it cloned the game object, which means it has all the same features as the original. Now, if I click into any one of these items and go to edit behaviors, I'm gonna add a new behavior. So go ahead and add a new behavior. And in the movement section, there are a ton of different types of movements. I'm gonna click on rotate because it just makes the object spin, all right? So I'm gonna click on add and then close it and just hit play. And when you do that, notice how all of them are spinning, right? So what we have to understand is you add it to one, if I click on others, they all have rotation on it. So there are two ways you can kind of work with how a platform works. And so I'm gonna show you one way. You could easily just click in here, and I'm actually gonna do it on this one, and not make it enabled, and it will not rotate. And I can land on it. And that's great. However, I find that highly inefficient if you keep doing that. So what I always like to do is I go up here and rename this. So I'm going to name this to a rotating platform, and then I'll re-enable this. So then you know it's rotating, right? So then if we double click here, go to sprite, and I'm just going to call this, let's call it fixed platform, meaning it's not going to move, okay? And I'm going to click here, and just for the sake of us using different colors right now, I'm just going to set this up where it has a different color, and I'm going to just do this up here, and I'm going to add the behavior that's called solid. So I hit add, and then I could close this out. And now if I hit play, I'm back to what it was, but all the rotating ones are actually rotating. So what you want to do is you kind of want to organize your platforms that way and have them doing particular pieces. So in your project section, what I always like to do is right click on object types and add a subfolder. And the subfolder itself, I'm just going to call it platforms. And I'm just going to drag all my platforms in here, okay? As we start building more and more items in your game, it's just nice to have this stuff organized, right? So if I don't need to look at platforms, you could uncollapse it. That way you're good to go, okay? So now I'm going to make another brand new platform. So go to sprite, and I'm going to call this moving platform. Let's see, moving platform. I'm going to insert it, and let's give it a blue color, I guess, for now. All right, so I'm going to make that a bit tinier. And now I'm going to go into the edit behavior section, add a new behavior. And in this behavior, we're going to do what we call assign. So this is going to adjust the object's position, size, angle, and have it oscillate between the middle point going left to right or top bottom and so forth. So we're going to play with this one, and there are a couple others that you can start playing around with. So I'm going to click on add and close this for now. And then if you look in the properties, you're going to see where you can make this horizontal, vertical, forwards, backwards, width, height, size, angle, opacity, Z elevation, and so forth. I'm going to leave it as is and just hit, actually we should probably add a solid to this. So let's go ahead and do that. And now hit play. So now you're going to see it kind of rock back and forth. Okay. So that's kind of how you get that general movement going. You can code these things out, but it's important to know what comes in the box, right? So for example, in here, you could decide what type of wave you want it, the period, the magnitude. So if the magnitude, the maximum change in pixels, degrees, and percentage, right? So let's say I do the magnitude at 200. What's going to happen? And this is where you guys get to really play with what occurs, right? So notice how now it's swaying back and forth a little bit more in terms of the amount of X that it's going left and right. So if that's something you need, then you could kind of make this where it's a time jump, and now all of a sudden you got that going for you, okay? So there are a lot of cool ways to play around with these types of rotations. Let me move this into platforms so we're a little organized. So that's how you do use the sign behavior. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and just add one more, and I'm just gonna call this moving platform 2. Not the best name in the world, but the reason is I'm just gonna keep changing the behaviors here. So we're gonna just play with them, okay? So I'm gonna go here, go to edit behaviors. Let's go ahead and add our solid. And now what we're going to do is let's click on orbit. Make an object move along an ellipses around a position. All right. So if you hit add and close, you get a bunch of items here. If I hit play, what's going to happen to this? Okay. All right. That's interesting. Is that what we want? I don't know. It just really depends on what your game is, right? So that's what that is. So I'm just gonna check the enable so it's not enabled, and I'm gonna add the next one. So you can add actual physics to it if you want, but there's this one that's called move to. Move an object to position with acceleration and deceleration. All right. So now let's take a look at what it's asking for. So you kind of get what angle to set, the speed, and so forth. And this here, the stop on solids, if it touches a solid, you could have it stop, which is really cool. Before you had to code this out, and now they've made it into a behavior, which makes it a little bit easier for you to deal with, okay? So right now, it's just right there. So it's set, but what you need to do is, I should probably have it stop on solids, checked, but you're gonna have to code the movement itself. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to the event sheet, and we're going to add an event, and we're just going to do this off of the start of layout. So let's take a look at start of layout, and what we're going to do is click on moving platform 2 and hit next. And then what we're going to do is scroll down, and you're going to see all these different options, animation, angles, and so forth. You could set collisions, and now move to. Now the thing is, you could have this move to a particular position or to an object. All right, you could do pathfinding and so forth. We're gonna go over pathfinding a little bit more, but just know that you got a lot of cool options. Do it on a timeline. You can move to a particular object, which is always cool, and so forth. So if I do move to position, I need to know the position. So before we jump into that, let's hit cancel, go to layout, and I'm just gonna add, let's see, this one is a solid, I believe, right? So we're just gonna kind of make it go here. Well, actually, no, this is a moving one. So let me make one more, and I'm just gonna call this just a regular old platform. All right, and guess we haven't used yellow yet, so let's go ahead and do this. go, and then I'm going to do that. So here, let me zoom in a little bit so you can kind of see this. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm just going to make this a solid. So let's go ahead and add a solid. Boom, there we go. So now what we can say is we want our moving platform to move to the object, and we want to move it to the platform. Direct, you could add a waypoint, so you could create multiple waypoints and all that. So it's really cool what you can do. You hit done, and then you could hit play, and this hopefully will stop. And did not. Oh, it did, but it kind of did it exactly where it's at. So things that you can do in order for that to make sure it stops beforehand is, let's go back to layout, and let me see, did I check? Oh, it got unchecked. There we go. So now move to stop on solids should happen where, boom. So now it touched that and it stopped. Now what you could do if you wanted to make it where, well, I don't really want that to happen. I really want it to take the spot of this. What you can do is, instead of using a platform or anything like that, I'm going to just move this down for right now. And I'm just going to call this stopping point. Oops. Stopping point. And I'm just going to do this here. Let's give it a little red color, I guess. For the most part, that's way too huge though. We're just gonna create this here, and what we're gonna do is just tell it to stop at this point right here. So we don't even have to have it make it that large. It could just stop right there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make the visibility false, so when the game plays it won't be seen. And then I go here, and instead of platform, I'm going to change it to stopping point. And when you do that, you just hit play, and now it's invisible, and this is going to a certain point, and it will stop. So there's little cool tricks, especially with invisible objects, that you can do to play around with your platforms and really get things happening in your game. So super important to kind of understand that piece. So just to kind of review, we made a few platforms. A fixed one, didn't really do anything. Moving platform, which had the sign behavior, and we're playing with the magnitude of it. Rotating, which had the rotate piece, and then we should move these in here so they're a little, oops. We have our moving platform 2, which just had a bunch of other things in here. But the move 2 was what I showed you last. We stopped it on solids, and we even made an event sheet where we had it go to a certain point. So you could always kind of think of this as like an elevator that takes you to another spot or wherever you want it to go, and you could control it this way, which is really nifty based on the type of game you're building. So just keep in mind that the important thing of this is, if you do not want all your platforms to do the same thing, you need to make different game objects. So label them appropriately so that way they're descriptive in the name, so you remember what's going on. Because right now these are all just solid colors, but eventually you will translate these into images or anything that you are building, right? So just be very mindful of that. All right, so that concludes this video, and I'll see you next time.